starting. So, what we want to look at today, even though the topic was the relevance of Pan Africanism to the youth, especially today, we are going to tie it into this topic also, which is called the historical resilience of the African people and the next phase of African liberation and the reconstruction through the Rapid Africa Plan. There's a gentleman who came up and drew up what he called the Rapid Africa Plan. And this is a plan which the continent needs to be able to leapfrog and other nations, to catch up with or even overtake other nations. Like we see the United States is around $23 trillion in GDP. China is right now is around 18 trillion in GDP and growing very, very fast. Europe, I think, is around 14 or 16 trillion. So these people should be able to overtake them. Our combined GDP as Africa is around $3 trillion. India is less than 3 trillion, is around 2.7, I think, around there. And others, Britain, Germany, and all those guys. So our combined GDP is around 3 trillion. So this gentleman is from Zimbabwe. He came up with the idea that for us to be able to leapfrog and find and industrialize, we need a plan. And that plan is, he gave it a name called the Rapid Africa Plan. So that plan is supposed to be a rapid industrialization plan. But there were some things which were definitely missing in that plan of reconstructing Africa. The political aspect is what was missing. And as young Africans and Pan-Africanists, that is our responsibility now. So to organize the political aspect of things in order for the Rapid Africa Plan to be able to, to be implemented, in order for it to be implemented. So the organization of society has always been the work of the youth. The youth, they are instrumental because that's where the energy is. They provide the energy always in society, and the elders, they provide the wisdom. But even today, those youth who are keen and curious, they can have both energy and wisdom. By the time someone is 30, 35, 36, if they have been eating the right intellectual food, by the right intellectual food, I mean, if someone has been studying, like, for example, our history as Africans, the Pan-African history, the person should be in a position by the age of 30, 36, to be able to govern, because to understand our continent. I'm not talking about today's demagoguery that is going on, whereby you have certain groups of people running around and they say they are ready to govern, but they don't know the history of the African continent. Someone today to govern this continent should be very well versed with the history of our continent and our people. And by our people, I mean all the African people, including those in the diaspora, or the so-called African Americans, or those in the Caribbean. Okay, so the young people, this is their duty. We as young people, this is what we are supposed to be doing, to organize society so that it can take off. If you go back and look at societies like China, those societies, for them to take off, starting the year around 1912, until when they had their revolution. They had their revolution from 1912 up to 1949. Is young people. They were in 30s, they were somewhere in their 20s. So they came together and they were concerned about their nation. And then they learned, when they learned from the elders, what they learned, they started with conviction, they started pushing forward to implement and trying to free China. And when they freed China, then they started the reconstruction process. The same thing with our independence. What happened with our independence in Africa is that the Nkrumahs were in their 30s when they started. Some of them, they were in their 20s. Like Patrice Lumumba of the Congo was very, very young. They were in their 20s. He was a teacher. Those Jomo Kenyattas and all the other people like Martin Luther King Jr., for example, he died in his early 30s. He was very young. By the time he entered the revolution, he was around, I think, 26, around there, 26. So he was ready. He had been educated very well. So that is what I mean by the right intellectual food. So we should be in that position of organizing our society for that takeoff, because Africa has lagged behind for a very long time. And definitely, as they said, the problem is the problem of leadership. I think it is Chinua Achebe who said that the problem of Africa is squarely the problem of leadership. But which kind of leadership does Africa need? It's not leadership which is made in Washington, or is not the type of leadership that is made in Paris or Beijing or anywhere. That is not the type of leadership that Africa needs. Africa needs leadership which is African in orientation, and like I said, people who understand leadership which understands the history of the continent. Then you can be able to understand. It's like a doctor. If you are going to treat a sick person, you ask the person their history. When did you start? When did the pain start? When did the tooth start paining you? How long have you been, like this? Has it ever happened to you before? So that so is like a doctor diagnosing that situation. And so that organization is what they call the political level of organization of society. There is around 3 levels of organization of society. Number 1, there is a society. Society is organized from the political level, and then the second level there is the economic level, and then we have the cultural level or the social level. The social, that's where we have the cultural level also. So when people like Nkrumah in the 1960s are saying, "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all the other things shall be added unto you." So this is what he means. Nkrumah is meaning that you look at your politics and organize society politically. The other things shall be able to take care of themselves. And that is what I told you, that the leader, the poet, I think Chinua Achebe, the one I said, who said that the problem of Africa is squarely the problem of leadership. So that is what is the same thing which Nkrumah is saying, that seek ye first the political kingdom, and all the other things shall be added unto you. Now, the question of why the youth should involve themselves in politics or the leadership of the continent, that one we can take another lecture for us to be able to understand that. I will need a full almost lecture to be able to expound on that and give you the information why you need, like we said for the start, the youth are the future. This continent, the old people are going to go away. People like, for example, President Museveni, 76 years, Nana Addo, how many years do they have, those guys, to live? Some of them may not even last the next 10 years, but you are going to stay here. So if you leave them to mess up everything and you don't involve yourselves, then definitely, you will be in a big mess when they have gone if you leave them. So that means you have to take preparation. So seek ye first the political kingdom, and all the other things shall be added unto you. That is what Nkrumah means. So our meeting is going to go off, I think, in the next 10 minutes, but I think we'll come back. Hello?
What we'll do, yes, Brother Kwame, what we'll do, we'll use the same link so that we start the fresh presentation in the next now 40 minutes. But yes, you can proceed, but now we will use, I'll ask members here, once the meeting goes off, just tap the same link you use so that you can get back.
Absolutely, I will do that.
Yes, so you can proceed.
Yes, so that level of organization of society, like I said, it starts from political, then economic, then social, then you have the social level. So what you hear people have been, even the differences in opinion in the Pan-African world, or even at the Organization of African Unity, or at the formation of the Organization of African Unity, or even at the current, African Union, what you hear, East African Community, SADC, ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, Maghreb, all these things, these are different in opinion because of the lack of understanding of how society is organized. Society, whether you are talking of a monarchy, kings, where when we had kings, you still have the political level of society. Whether you are talking about even a family, you have the political level of society, then you have the economic level, then you have the social level of organization. You have the father and the mother who are the politicians in the home, and then you have the economics of the home. Once you have the economics of the home is in order, then you know that you are going to have a good family. That is the social level, a fairly organized family, because the mother and father are functional, then they have put in order their economic, order, and then you have a good social order in the home. So even society, that is how it is organized, that when you have good leadership at the top, a political system, first of all, the right political system, which produces the right political leaders, then you will have your economics taken care of, because economics depends on good leadership, good economic policies and all that. And then the social level of society, crime, prostitution, all those things, they will be organized and there will be results of a good economic system. So because you don't have a good economic system, then you have crime, prostitution, and all those things, because these people down here at the social level, they are looking for a means of sustenance, survival, things of that nature. But all these things, they depend on the political level. So it is important to understand how these three sections of society serve each other, and which one is primary and important, and which one is important and secondary. You see, so that is where the confusion normally comes in. So Nkrumah was so advanced in his understanding of society that he had spent so much time in researching that is why they always quote him even today. Everywhere they quote Nkrumah, because his level of understanding of society was far advanced. Nyerere said that when Nkrumah died, he took 10 years to study what Nkrumah was saying in the 60s, because Nkrumah died in 1972. So when Nkrumah died, Nyerere said that he immediately took up books to study what Nkrumah had written and what he was saying. He said that it took him 10 years to understand what Nkrumah was saying after the death of Nkrumah. So the CIA, they did a study on Nkrumah, and they said that during his time when he was living, that he was more than 50 years ahead of the people he was leading. So he was seeing things which are coming, and other people were not seeing these things. So he warned and one time there's a speech in which he was warning about the dangers that are going to face Africa, the existing dangers during that time. And he was saying that I've painfully, so he himself was saying, I've painfully tried to explain, the dangers, but the people are not understanding, because he was seeing clearly. So that is these are the examples which we are supposed to look at as the youth. So let us go out of the meeting, and then we will re-enter again, so that I can run through and just close up very quickly in less than 30 minutes through this slide. It's about eight slides, and then we will be able to to close up. So let us go out and then come back in.
Okay, so everyone can leave the meeting and join again.
Yes. Okay, so no problem. Yeah, so yes, no problem. So what we are saying now is that for us to understand our continent and where we are, is necessary for us to understand history as it is, our history. So if you are talking about leadership on the continent, there's no way you can lead this continent if you don't know about the history of this continent. As we were saying, we are talking about the issue of leadership on the continent. We have to be very much involved as the young people, and that stems from our understanding of the continent itself. It's like marriage, when people are going into marriage, the elders in our African society normally put them aside and train them and talk to them. This is what happens. This is what, you know, if things happen this way, this is how you're supposed to. So we are supposed to be trained in that sense. And especially when we are still young, we are supposed to be involved and trained well. We are supposed to be trained well. We are supposed to eat the right intellectual food, consume the right intellectual food. Now, this we are talking about Pan-Africanism today and how it is relevant today. I want to show you in this presentation, I want to show you the events that are going on today, some of the things which are going on today. And some of them actually will surprise you that they are very relevant to the Pan-Africanism which Nkrumah was talking about in 1960, which led to the formation of what we call the African Union today. Is very relevant due to what is going on today. So I will show you with what is happening in this presentation. So we called this the historical resilience of the African people and the next phase of African liberation. Now, we said this because we believe that Africa has gone through different phases of liberation. That is why we've said that the next phase of African liberation. Now, African, history, we are going to look at briefly African history, in form of struggle, African history of struggle, for freedom. And then we will look at where the world is today in relation to Africa. And then we will look at the way forward for Africa, which I have called the Rapid Africa Plan. There's a gentleman called Huntington Mubaiwa, and that Huntington Mubaiwa, who's from Zimbabwe, drew up a plan. It's called the Rapid Africa Plan. But that plan has some things which need filling in, and that is the work which is supposed to be of the youth, organizing society, so that this Rapid Africa transformation of the continent can take place. Because as you know, figures have been coming out and figure out that 70% of the continent of Africa today, they are under the age of 30 years or 35. I think if you talk of 35, it could go even higher than that. So, and the rest of the world is facing problems with aging. So their people are aging. So that means they are going to need labor. So if we do not organize the continent, we are not, bothered about what is happening on the continent, then the continent is going to be exploited in a major way. Even this exploitation that is coming, it will even be worse than what slavery or colonialism was. That means if we do not take the responsibility, we think that it is not our responsibility to look at politics and reorganize society. So the labor that is going to run the world in the next 10 50 years is going to be in Africa. So now that negligence, if we allow it to go ahead within ourselves, then the continent, they will exploit the material resources, and they will exploit the labor also. They will be coming and taking the smart people from the continent, the young and energetic and smart people. They will be harvesting them, taking them to Europe, China, and all those countries. China recently, I think last week, was encouraging its population to the people to give birth more. So they are putting up policies for allowing their people to give birth to more children, because the population is aging in China and they need enough population to sustain economic growth. So if we don't take care as Africans, then these problems are likely to happen to us and our people. So that is what we say, that the Rapid Africa Plan is supposed to be implemented, but it is supposed to be implemented because it is an industrial policy, it's an economic policy or industrialization policy. Then the political level is supposed to be prepared, the ground is supposed to be prepared. And that ground can only be prepared by the youth. They have to be ready to do the work of preparing the ground. Then the other things will come. So, because the youth of today are not going to be youth, definitely, in the next 30 years or 20 years. So, what the work they do now is to prepare for the next young generation when they themselves have gone. And that is what all generations have done in all other societies which have developed, whether you are talking about Europe, whether you are talking about the United States, some of them who have even used the African labor. So they have prepared themselves and come and use other people's resources to develop themselves. China used its own resources, but it was young people who helped to prepare the ground. So we called that the Rapid Africa Plan. We'll look at the history of struggle for freedom. Then we will look at where the world is today in relation to Africa. And then we will look at the way forward for the African continent. Now, I want to start with a gentleman called Ray Dalio. This gentleman, he's an investor. He is having the biggest hedge fund. If you have heard about what they call a hedge fund, he has a hedge fund is a management of money. You know, is a company which manages money, but it doesn't manage money for individuals. It manages money for institutions. Okay, institutions which have a lot of money, banks. So that person has an expertise who runs an hedge fund. He has expertise in understanding how the world works, how the economy is running, which countries are rising and falling, and then which parts of the economy to put money. He understands what war, which country are being involved in war and where to shift and put money during war to get, like right now, some companies have been investing in, in companies which are producing weapons because the United States is putting a lot of weapons into Ukraine. So the stocks of the companies which are manufacturing weapons are going high. So these investors, they choose money and they put it there. So sometimes they study nations and they see which nations are rising and they put money there and they say this one is falling, this nation is falling, according to these and these indicators looking at history. So Ray Dalio looked at history and he's constantly looking at history. He has even written a book which was published in 2020 around November. No, it was published last year in November in 2021. It is called Principles for Understanding, Principles for Understanding how to deal with the changing world order and how nations rise and fall. So he's commenting, he took some of the excerpts from that book. That is what he's commenting on here on Yahoo Market. Yahoo Market is a Yahoo sort of like a broadcast where they comment about the events that are happening in the world and then how they affect the market and how they affect the economy. So that is what I want you to listen to. He went back to study history 500 years ago, how empires were rising, Britain, Spain, the Chinese, and then he was looking at certain indicators that show that either the United States is still on the right trajectory of development and economic growth so that he can keep investing the money he's managing, because he's managing around $160 billion. Just to put that in perspective, the economy of Ghana is around, I think, $65 billion. This guy is managing $160 billion, and he himself his net worth is around $20 billion, just one person. So just put that in perspective. I don't know, Pigeon, I don't know how big the Kenyan economy is. I don't know whether it is up to $80 billion. But I understand that the Uganda economy right now has approached, I think, 35 to $40 billion. But this guy, one person, has $20 billion, one person. So let us listen to him just a little bit, and then we'll take it from there.
Ray Dalio is one of the most influential investors in the world today. He started his company Bridgewater out of his 2-bedroom apartment in New York City in 1975 and has grown it into the world's largest hedge fund. Dalio is the author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, Principles, Life and Work, in which he shares a blueprint for success, personal and professional. Dalio is an active philanthropist and conservationist with a special interest in ocean exploration and conservation.
I'm pleased to bring in our next guest, Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest and most profitable hedge fund firm. Ray is also a well-known philanthropist and an author of multiple books. Ray, it's great to have you with us.
So nice to be here.
So I mentioned at the top that you're an author of multiple books, and I know that you're writing one now called The Changing World Order, and you've been talking about 3 forces at play that were here pre-pandemic. Would love for you to share your worldview with our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, I do research, and so this is a study that I've been doing, and then I decided to share it with people because I think it's so important. A number of years ago, first with 2008, we got into a monetary situation, of course, where we're printing money, creating a lot of debt, and monetizing it. And then populism emerged around the world. And President Trump, who was more of a populist, emerged. And it affected tax policy, it affected markets in a lot of different ways. And that led me to realize that there are 3 big things that are going on in the world that are dominant. And then COVID came along. Those 3 forces are, first, the long-term debt and monetary cycle, which I mean the creating a lot of debt, monetizing it, and the implications of that, which reverberate through the system in terms of all the markets and everything. The second is this conflict, this polarization, this wealth gap, and how we're at each other's throats. And I looked at the wealth gap, and I looked at a lot of measures of conflict going back in time, and I found that they were in the 1930 to 45 period. The printing of money, as I described, and debt monetization was also in the 1930 to 45 period. And the third big influence is the rise of China, so the rise of a great power, challenging an existing great power.
Now, what I want you to do is that I want you to pay attention to the years he's mentioning. He's mentioning the year 1945, and then the year 1945 is very, very important in African history. But on top of that, there is certain years also which he mentions. When you are talking about the year, for example, 1776, when the United States became independent and it was formed, then there's another year, the year 1791 is very important. Then the year 804 is very, very important in African history, because these years, certain events were going on around the world. And all these things were happening, and they affected the world, but also they affected how Africans were behaving and how they reacted and how they were being treated, around. So Africans, to a certain level, took advantage of 1945, for example. You heard that he's mentioning 1945. There was a lot of problems. There was a lot of debt. There was World War II and stuff like that. So those things I want to show you. What I want to show you is how those things are happening even today, but people are not noticing that those things are happening.
United States. And that has enormous implications. As an investor, I think, what are the relative appeals of the markets, but it has a lot of implications. It's not just a trade war. So the markets and everything were reverberating the trade war, the technology war, the geopolitical war in Taiwan and the South China Seas, and then also the capital war. We're seeing that emerge. So those 3 factors required me to then go back in history. And I wanted to study the rises and declines of reserve currency empires. So I needed to go back far enough that I would have a few. So I had to go back 500 years so I could see the rise and decline of the Dutch Empire and its reserve currency, the rise and decline of the British Empire and its reserve currency, the rise and beginning of decline for the United States and its reserve currency, and China. And so those are the forces, and that's what I did, which you're referring to. And that, by the way, that's available for anybody to read on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so that is Ray Dalio. So why I was talking to you about this is because I wanted you to understand the importance of history. Now here we are talking about the guy who is investing today. Today he's an investor, but he's talking about going back 500 years in history in order for him to be able to invest well and understand where he's going to put his money so that he can make profit. Because he's a capitalist. We know capitalists, like investing. So this is the importance of history, because to a certain extent, Africans have been alienated from their history, because the white man is always, or the Western world is always telling the Africans, forget what happened in the past, let us focus in the future. Like recently, Emmanuel Macron was in Algeria, and those people in Algeria, he went there to beg for gas and oil. They are disturbing Ukraine. The Western world is disturbing Russia, and they have blocked Russian gas. So the prices of oil have gone up. And now, in turn, these sanctions which they have put on Russia are affecting them. So they are running around the world to search for alternative sources of gas, because they have rejected Russia's gas. So he was in Algeria, and in Algeria, when he was there, his advances of begging and trying to get cheap gas were rejected. So he said, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, said that that Algeria, they have gotten stuck in history. They are so minding up so much about history that they are not looking forward and what they can do together. France can do together with Algeria, and that is because in the 1950s and 1960s, France mistreated Algeria and the Africans over there, that they killed plenty people when they were fighting for independence. So the Algerians still have this, and they have never forgotten this. And they have always told us as Africans that we should forget it. History is not important. And that is not true. That is not true. You are supposed to remember how you came to where you are today. You can't just forget and say, I'm forgetting history, let me throw away history. You don't do that. In China, when you go to China, the Chinese man, he never forgets history. And when you are talking to him, he will tell you that China has a long history. It has 3,000 years of history. So when you are talking about human rights and what, the Chinese will tell you that the things which we care about in our society are very different from what the Western world cares about in their society. They care about individualism. The Chinese care about order in their society. That is number one, aside individualism. The Africans, actually, for them, care about Ubuntu. They care about the community more than the individualism. But the Africans have been sort of brainwashed and told that they should not care about the things which matter to them as their society. They should not care. They should care about what the white man wants or the Western world wants. And to a certain level, Africa has given in that we have become subjects for a very long time. For the last 600 years, we have become subjects to the Europeans. That it is as recent as 1945, 1791, that we started fighting back and trying to take back some of our things. But they are here because they have a lot of resources. They are working us, telling us homosexuality, you have to allow this, you have to marry maybe one wife and stuff like that. However, things are controversial. All those things, you have to practice this kind of democracy. If you don't practice this, we'll put sanctions on you. So all those things, the white man, so we are supposed to be like the shadow or a photocopy of a white man. So that is the importance of history, that we should never forget our history. Our history is supposed to be at our fore like this. In every decision, every time we are making a decision, our leaders who led the independence, and they were very passionate about the continent, those are the people whose thought should guide the building of a new Africa. So when we are talking about building a new Africa, we should not be talking about SDGs. MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. These things are made by the white man from the World Bank. They are not for Africa, these things. And they have never helped. Structural adjustments. We should go and look at what did Nkrumah want Africa to look like. Okay, these are the thoughts which we should be implementing. And Nkrumah wrote it down. What did Nyerere want Africa to look like? Nyerere wrote it down, how he wanted Africa to look like, for us to organize society as the young people. These are the things we are supposed to read. What did Marcus Garvey want Africa to look like? What did George Padmore want Africa to look like? What did Walter, Rodney, who wrote How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, want Africa to look like? Okay, what did he say Africa should do? What did Chika Anta Diop? These are the real people who cared about our continent. These are our ancestors. So when we are talking about building a new Africa, we are supposed to interrogate history as to how our ancestors wanted the continent to look like, not how Washington or Paris or or Beijing or whoever or London, how they want Africa to look like, and whatever they are going around and spreading and telling everyone to do. That is not what we are supposed to do. That is not the Africa that we are supposed to have. We are supposed to have the Africa that our ancestors wanted. That vision, we talk about people like Zuma, Madame Zuma, Nkosazana, who was the chairman of African Union, chairperson of the African Union Commission before Moussa Faki came. She wrote a letter to Nkrumah, an imaginary letter, when she was resigning. I think it was in 2014 before Moussa Faki, or 2014 or 2016. I'm not very sure about the year when she resigned. She wrote an imaginary letter to Nkrumah. So she was like answering back to Nkrumah, telling Nkrumah that Nkrumah, what you wanted, we are doing it. So she was saying that we have built a new Silicon Valley sort of technology hub in the Congo where the resources are. We have built, high-speed trains which are coming from Zanzibar, all the way to Senegal. We have built highways which are coming from, in Cape Town up to all the way to Cairo. So she was just writing that imaginary letter. If you want, you can Google that imaginary letter written by Nkosazana Zuma, who was the chairperson of the African Union Commission. So that is the importance of history. So she was referring, even her herself, she was referring to Nkrumah. She wants to build, in her mind, she wanted to build an Africa which Nkrumah wanted. So this is the importance of us understanding which Africa, if we are talking about developing Africa, which Africa do we want to develop? How does it look? How is it going to look? Okay, because we are not just going to come and build something because the white man has said, do this, do that. That is why we have met the problems we have met so far. And we have been slow in developing. China has developed within a period of 30 years. And yet the time within which we got our independence is almost similar. Many people have been talking about Singapore. Others have been talking about Taiwan. Many people especially compare with the Singapore. I know Singapore is a little bit different from Africa. Singapore is a small island, while Africa is a big landmass. But normally people pick out countries in Africa and compare with Singapore. But the point I'm trying to make is that the time for building nations has reduced. While Britain and Europe took around 600 years to be fully developed, the United States took around 300 years. 200 to 300 years. China and the Asian tigers have taken less than a generation, in less than 100 years. Some of them are in 30 years, some of them 50 years. So that time has reduced. Why? Because people have increased in knowledge. The knowledge is more available now. I can communicate to you. I'm in Ghana. You guys are in, in Kenya. Others are in Nigeria. All around the globe. We can communicate in a second, and we have achieved our objectives. We have spoken. So all these things are supposed to aid in a rapid development. But that rapid development, this knowledge which has come about, cannot be used if we do not organize ourselves and we do not understand where we are coming from. You see, we are supposed to understand, first of all, where we are coming from before we can take advantage of the opportunities. So that means we are studying our conditions. This is what they call the conditions, or what Nkrumah called it African milieu. So milieu means the conditions, the social conditions. What are your social conditions? So the systems which have been brought by the white man, the structural adjustments, Millennium Development Goal, Sustainable Development Goals, all these things have not worked and we have not developed because they don't fit our milieu. They don't fit our African milieu. They don't fit our African social order or how our conditions, our social conditions. So that is why it is important, I said, to go back and study what our ancestors who studied our society and they understood it. You see? So these people, they took time to study. People like Amilcar Cabral, they analyzed our society. And Nkrumah analyzed our society and he looked at our society. What is made up of our society? You know, chiefs, kings, tribes. And so what is the system or development that is suited for us? So all that knowledge has been neglected by the current generation of leaders. So now it needs a new generation of leaders, which is the young people right now, the young generation right now that is supposed to take that knowledge now and start implementing it and say, white man, take away your things. We are now going to build Africa on African thought. So that is what they, they call African philosophy of Ubuntu. So we look at resources, we manage them in respect with our culture and the things which we care about. Now, that is history. I was just trying to emphasize the importance of history. That video which we have watched by Ray Dalio, who is the founder of Bridgewater Associates, the biggest hedge fund company in the world, was talking about. He was talking about the importance of history and what is happening today. So I'm going to Eric Lee. Eric Lee is also a political scientist from China. So he's telling you today that things are changing. He gave this speech in 2017. He gave this speech in 2017. He was predicting what is happening today. And ever since he gave this speech, which is very short, I cut it from a certain lecture which he was giving. Ever since he gave this speech, what he was saying has even become more rapid. It has even become more catalyzed if you look at what is happening around the world. So let us listen to him for a second and then we'll go on. We have done so far 4 slides out of 8. So we are almost there.
Beginning the Enlightenment, of course. I think we're at the end of a 300-year run of a liberal vision of the world. However you want to call it, or maybe some call it the modern. And I think that vision is in some trouble. Not predicting its demise, not yet, but it's in some trouble now because in the last 30 years, to this day, since the end of the Cold War, that liberals around the world have pursued a rather extreme ideological version of modern liberalism, which precludes and excludes other possibilities, both intellectually and economically, to the point where I think the leader of the liberal world, the United States, of course, had committed what Paul Kennedy defined as imperial overreach, both externally and internally. Externally, it's gone too far in trying to impose its vision on the rest of the world, on so many countries, to some extent, in some cases militarily, to rather disastrous consequences. And internally, it's taken this vision of the world which places the individual as the autonomous basic unit of society at the center of the universe. Internally, it's gone pretty far since the Reagan and Thatcher revolution with the neoliberal economic doctrine that has led to tremendous inequality in developed countries that are generating this backlash against the liberal tradition, both the liberal tradition and globalization itself. And these problems are not being solved. Beginning
So what Eric Lee is saying is that the Western world has been imposing its version of the interpretation of the world onto everyone around the earth. Its interpretation of politics, its interpretation of economics, its interpretation of social organization of society, all these it has been, imposing on the world. And of course we know what is happening in Africa, that Africa has been a victim of this for a very long time, that we have been living in their image. So what Eric Lee is saying is that that order is coming to an end. You see. So what we will do is that if this one cuts off, I think next time we will start from there and finish up next time.
No,
We'll
Brother
just.
Kwame, what do you think? And I need to know, can we go for the third session after this, or should we have a continuation of this presentation in the next class? So we give you another class on next Monday to continue.
Yes, we'll come another time, and then we'll take it. When this one cuts off, we'll have another class and then to finish up.
Brother Kwame, I have a Google team. It's called a Google Teams app. Google Teams app do not have a limited time. I had asked my students to download this and they've downloaded it. Can we move to Google Teams next time so that we don't have these interruptions?
Yes. I think we should have even used that.
It has
We
free
should have used
recording
Google.
and it doesn't have anything else.
Yeah, we should have used the Google itself. So,
Okay.
but no problem. So if this one cuts off, we have less than 5 minutes. If it
Okay.
cuts off, then we'll start from there next time. Yeah.
Now
So
what I'll do, I'll not allow you to continue. What I'll do, I'll just get some few remarks from my members, but we will
okay.
keep on from here. From Lee, let's start the next time. I'll give you another 1.5 hour presentation for the next Monday class so that you continue revolution. But I'll just give a quick response of any one person in the audience to give us their input and whether they concur
No
with us so
problem.
that next week we have another presentation. Now, anybody
No
from the
problem.
participants who can give quick remark and whether they endorse our decision to continue this class under Google Team, what you call Microsoft Teams, next week for another 1 hour. Anybody within the audience can give input very fast so that we can wind up this. Then just look forward to the next discussion so that we have a full presentation moving forward.
Yeah, then they will ask questions next time. Actually, next time we'll get time to finish up and then also ask questions and have that interaction.
Anybody who have a quick remark in the next 2 minutes? Anybody before we wind up?
Yeah, we have 4 minutes left.
Anybody in the audience who can give any small input, error, you can endorse or do anything?
Yeah, Mkenya wants to speak.
Okay, I think I'll take this opportunity to thank our brother. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Good. I want to take this opportunity to thank our comrade Kwame, for you are actually enlightening us a lot. I didn't actually know of people like Eric Lee, and I think that we are actually on the right trajectory to learning about Pan-Africanism and what Africa needs to do. But I would also try to ask that during the next class, we try to push it a little bit faster so that we try and cover as much ground as we can in the limited time that we have, so that we do not have a lot of time wastage, given that there are still a lot that we need to cover and go through. And
Yes.
I think it will be great. Otherwise, I want to thank you very much. And I really do appreciate I love it when I see that Africans and Africans are actually thinking about Africa, and we are trying to solve the mystery that is actually our ailing African. And I think that we are going to do it, and we can actually do it. Our brothers did it. Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, everybody, our forefathers had been so strong in agitating for it, and it's our duty to see to it that it actually comes to fruition. So let us continue channeling the spirit. Let us continue fighting hard until we see to it that it gets.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
How many minutes? 1 minute or 2?
We have 2 minutes.
Okay, allow me to say that in my class over here, I know we have Brother William Sosoji from Nigeria.